Hi everyone, Pastor Ryan here, and I want to welcome you to our special worship service this week. As many of you know, there's a lot going on in the world. And one of the hardest things to do is admit that we need to have some honest conversation. And that makes us really uncomfortable. And I'll be the first to admit, when all this started and as things continue to come out, I've just been heartbroken. Many of you may have seen the song that I posted that God put on my heart to share. And I said, I don't have the answers, and I still don't. But one of the most important things I think for us to recognize is the need to have some honest conversation together about what is really going on and how we as the church need to stand between the divide that is happening in the world today and be a voice of love, of compassion, and humility in the midst of that. And so today, worship's going to look a little different. It's going to be uncomfortable for many of us potentially. It was really uncomfortable for me to admit that I needed to have this conversation in the first place, and I'm putting myself in a position where some of you may disagree with what we chose to do this week, and that's okay. What I ask for you as you engage in this conversation with us this morning is to have the Holy Spirit invited into your heart so that you would approach it with humility and with grace. Because all of us have a lot of varied opinions and a lot of different approaches to how we view the situation. But I believe that this morning, the conversation between myself, Pastor Stephen, and Tyree Sterling, who many of you even know from other engagements and ways, is a man who's after God's own heart. And he is one of the most gentle giants you'll ever meet. But there's some honest conversation that he wanted to offer with us because we needed to have that. And so this video is going to be broken into two parts because there's a lot to unpack. But I hope that in the midst of this conversation, even if you don't agree with everything that is offered, that you are at least willing to join us in this conversation and to have some grace and that humility that says, even if we disagree, we're on the same team. We ultimately are on the same team for the glory of Christ in this world. So let me offer a word of prayer before we jump into that conversation. God of all creation, we thank you for the beauty that you have bestowed on each of us as bearers of your image, God. And we thank you for the sacrifice of your Son, Jesus Christ, that is our salvation. And that alone is what saves us. God, fill us all with your Holy Spirit. Remind us that we don't have all the answers. We don't always know what's going on every time something happens. But God, it takes willingness to come to the table, to stand with those who are marginalized and feeling oppressed, God, and say, I need to hear your side of things. And I need to be open to where it is that you are having people cry out for justice. So God, as we have this conversation, soften our hearts that we are just clay in your hands. Open our minds, and may our spirits be humble enough to come to this table without preconceived ideas or barriers that keep us from being a part of standing between the hate and the anger that is so prevalent in this world, God, that we might stand against sin wherever it crops itself up. And God, may we be your emissaries to this world, that God, we might see your kingdom appear in glimpses that remind us we are approaching something ever more beautiful than what we are experiencing now. God, we pray this all in earnest and in your name. Amen. Hi everyone, thanks for joining us this week for our video of worship. This time around, we thought we'd do something a little different. We have a special guest, Tyree Sterling, with us here. Whoop, whoop. Whoop, whoop. Yeah, so we're glad he's here with us, and we were continuing this conversation about the Holy Spirit, and this week, we obviously can't deny the elephant in the room. There's been a lot going on in the world. We're here to talk about spiritual fruits, but what Stephen and I sort of talked about a little bit was, as we talk about spiritual fruits, they're reflective of how we need to respond to all sorts of things in the world. And even though we don't have answers to every little problem that's going on, we thought we wanted to try to model what would look best in a gospel-centered way to have some honest conversation about what we're seeing in terms of the racial tensions that are going on. And we thought Tyree is a great connection we already have, and we wanted to offer him an opportunity to join us, to come into this place and just speak with us. And it doesn't mean we have to agree on everything, but we're looking at this from the perspective of we want to embody love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Did I get all those in there correctly?
Yeah.
All right, good. All right.
Well, and for me, it's been a struggle for me because I don't know how to respond.
Sure.
And I want to be able to learn myself so I can lead others to respond well. And so that's why I wanted, like, how can we get together with somebody? And you had the connection, and I'm glad you're here with us because, my heart's breaking for what I'm seeing, but I don't know how to respond. I feel like if I don't say something, I'm wrong. And if I say something, I want to make sure what I'm saying is not wrong.
Right.
So
Yeah, I want to, first of all, give honor to Pastor Ryan. So your communication with me was not something that was out of the ordinary. So it wasn't like you had to probably go out searching to see if you had a black friend you could talk to about this.
Right.
So I just want to thank you for just having people of color in your circle that you can have this conversation with. And thank you for finding myself a safe place to kind of talk to. I talked to many of my friends and said, I think one of the greatest things that people of color in this moment can do is to become that safe place for other white people to be able to come to express themselves, and basically verbally throw up, right? I don't know what I'm just saying. Blah, help me clean it up so I can get my thoughts together.
Absolutely.
Because if not, we're kind of talking to ourselves, we're kind of having conversations in our own head. Okay, if someone says this, how would I? But it's good to just get it out and then be able to clean it all up and say, okay. Because a lot of times when you talk, you begin to, when you say things, you're like, yeah, that thing I said 10 minutes ago was stupid. I probably should say it this way. Yeah. But a lot of times in your first conversation, what you said 10 minutes ago was literally stupid, and that person walked away from it saying, that person is stupid. Right. So I think the more times we can rehearse these conversations, have these conversations, there are so many more 10 minutes in the midst of every conversation, but that by the time you're a day, a week, a month, 2 years into it, how many times have you had time to finally articulate the thing that you're trying to say?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's what having people of different backgrounds and cultures within your friend group, it gives you all those 10-minute spaces of conversations to be able to articulate what it is you say. This conversation, this may be new for many people in America. I think this issue with George Floyd, I think this was a staple in the minds of America that we could look at a situation and we can say, I know without a shadow of a doubt, before the camera, there's no well, what happened before? It's we can all agree that this thing was handled incorrectly. Sure. And so I think what this did was it kind of brought us all to the same mindset.
Yeah.
And now from there, what happens? And I believe the enemy is great at his plan is to steal, kill, and destroy. And so what happened when you get to that moment? Riots. Okay, let's look at that. Because that was about to be an awkward pill to swallow.
Right.
So let's focus on this thing right here because I also have to deal with some things. And I don't want to deal with those. I'd rather be distracted by these things. Because this issue of race will always be an issue. Well, this issue of race will always be an issue
if we allow it
with myself, right? It's always an issue, but it won't be as an issue as it is right now, And like you said, if we allow it, But again, we talked a little bit earlier. This messy thing with racism is you don't know it's there until it comes out. Right. It's like whack-a-mole, And so. What I mean by that is I want to clear up some definitions when I say racist and prejudice, where Webster's dictionary says racism is to believe that your race is more superior than another. So racism is not, the black guy over there in the white shirt. That just means you can see, right? That doesn't mean that racism would be, the black guy in the white shirt, he needs to walk on the other side of the street. Because I'm walking on the side. I'm more superior than that guy.
Right.
Right. Prejudice will come in to, the black guy in the white shirt. Prejudice will come in and say, the black guy in the white shirt. Let me kind of make sure I have my So it's not that I think I'm better than him. It's just that I prejudged him based on my personal bias and what I've seen in media. That I prejudge that he could do something.
Right. Because of his skin color.
Because of the skin color,
right.
yeah. Or because, I think it's prejudging, period. When you see someone with glasses, I think probably intelligent. I see somebody, our society, when we see someone with red hair, what do we think? Firecracker, hot-tempered. Right? Why is that?
Right.
Because society has trained us to think that certain people that fit a description are this way.
Right.
And so when we get up to females with blonde hair,
Ditzy.
where does that come from? Because I know so many females with blonde hair that will kill you in a debate. And so where does that come from? It comes from a system of how we've been trained to think about people from the moment we look at them.
Right.
And so that system of thinking needs to be changed. And so there's people who are sexist. I'm a certain gender, so therefore other genders are below me. And so that's what those things mean. So I wanted to kind of clear up those definitions before moving forward. So when we say these definitions, you know what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think another definition that's been helpful for me as I've witnessed some of the social media interactions I've witnessed is a differentiation between the riots and the protests.
Right.
Because the protests are by and large peaceful demonstrations that are saying there is an issue.
Right.
We don't know all the answers, but we've got to do something.
Right.
The rioting and looting and anger that is being utilized is a crime. Exactly. And we can all agree on that.
Right.
But we've got to differentiate that part of what's happening from what the rest of the movement that is saying we want this to still remain a civil society that we can all be equals in.
Right.
But right now that doesn't feel that way.
Right.
And that's an important distinction that I think is really hard for some of us on the outside watching the news media, the social media posts, the news media, putting certain things into the story and leaving out others.
Right.
And now we're left with two differentiating competing stories when the truth is usually somewhere in between.
Right. Yeah.
And that's important.
Yeah. And when it comes to protests and riots, it becomes very messy because, I could raise a great child, but if that child chooses to have other bad influences around it and that child begins to go off with those influences, it doesn't mean that child didn't start out being told the right way to do it. And so when it comes to protests, many of them start out peaceful and in the right mind, but other outside influences come in and spark that. It doesn't mean that the protests started out wrong.
Right.
It just meant that other factors came in to now do that. And so when we have that frame of mind, we can't say, oh, they're all bad. We need to all avoid it. Because just like a couple cops within a spectrum of a police department doesn't make the whole police department bad. We wouldn't say that. We wouldn't dare say, oh, well, there was like 2 cops in that precinct, so the whole precinct is just bad.
Right.
We would say 2 cops do not define all 100 and so police officers.
Right. That's just another prejudice.
Right. So we can't say that these 2 protests that went bad are a symbol of all the other protests.
Right.
We wouldn't dare say that about anything else. But because it gets uncomfortable, we need an scapegoat to be able to look for it and say, this is too uncomfortable, let me focus on these 2 things and just make the blanket statement about all of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so I'm for saying, listen, riots, bad, they're criminal. You shouldn't steal.
Right.
Period. And so now that we've dealt with that, now let's go back and now let's deal with the uncomfortable elephant in the room that you're trying to avoid, which is now what are you going to do at the family reunion? Now what are you going to do when you go back into the circle and they begin to talk about these things?
Right.
Now I need to talk about the riots because is it hot in here? I'm nervous. It's the uncomfortable thing.
Sure.
And so, I don't know if people know about neural pathways or like new ways of thinking. Like when you begin to generate new pathways and new ways of thinking, it's uncomfortable. Your heartbeat starts racing, you begin to get sweaty, and we want to avoid all those things.
Sure.
And so this conversation about race, when you're not used to it, when you haven't already had those neural pathways of conversation, it becomes an awkward thing, so you reject it and you think it's wrong. And we should just talk about it. If we stop talking about it, it'll go away.
Right. New or different, bad.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, it's like your brakes are going bad on your car. You turn up the radio so you can't hear it no more.
Right.
My brakes are going to be fine. Now you're going to go down to the rotor, and then your rotor's going to cost so much more. It would have been a brake problem, would have been a brake pad issue. Couple dollars, you fix it on your own if you want to. Or you're going to have to go down to the rotor, take it to a garage, now it'll cost some more.
Right.
This issue of race right now is the brake squealing. Don't turn up the volume of protests and riots so you can't address it. Because if you don't address it, it's going to continue to get worse.
Sure, absolutely.
All right, so on backing it up even more, the mindset and the things that go through the minds of people. I never owned a slave. I'm not racist.
Right.
Yet here we are, far removed from anyone owning a slave,
Right.
and that seems to be the issue
Right.
that we as white people are stuck on, and it's not addressing what's really happening. We're talking about systemic racism, not having slaves and those types of things, and there's a difference that we need to understand.
Yeah. First of all, I would say, if you can say you've never owned a slave in 2020, I'm going to say thank you. Because if you still own a slave in 2020, like, you have gotten past a lot of systems, and a lot of people have turned a blind eye if you have slaves right now. So thank you. So now that we've gotten past that, I recognize that all white people living in 2020 I would hope, they have never owned slaves. Right? Yeah. So now that we've gotten past that, now let's go back to the issue. So there, I believe there's a thing of not being racist to being anti-racist. And what I mean by that is you can say, I don't believe that my race is more superior than others, so I'm not a racist. But anti-racist means anytime I'm in an environment that someone does believe their race is more superior, I speak out about it.
Right. And our United Methodist tradition actually has a social principle in its book of discipline that specifically says racism is equal to sin. And that's not just a pretty...
Day, right?
It's not just
there's no wiggle room.
Right. And it's not meant to just be... Our social principles aren't just supposed to be a paragraph saying, oh, look at us, we say it's bad, yay. No, that means we need to take an active role at some level in some way to continue to push back on anything that comes up as being racist, sexist, evil, sinful behavior in this world.
Right.
We may not agree entirely on the way that it's happening per se, and that's another conversation that'll take a long time, I think, to really unpack.
Right.
But we can all agree and have that same common ground of saying, yes, racism is bad.
Right.
It is a sin to think that I'm superior solely because I have a different skin color. When in reality, we look at Revelation chapter 5 and we see this beautiful description of worship.
Right.
And it's people from all nations and tribes and tongues just falling in worship before the throne of the Lord saying, God, you alone are worthy of our worship.
Right.
I mean, that's a beautiful picture.
Right.
And that's what I mean, deep in my heart, that's what I crave more than anything, is that we would all come together regardless of who we are or where we're from and say, man, we can come together because we know Christ is Lord.
Right.
But that doesn't happen in reality if we aren't willing to take the step toward facing that elephant in the room.
And there's potential for something good to come out of this.
Right.
If there's someone willing to lead this movement, because if there's not a leader for the movement, we had Martin Luther King Jr. a long time. He led a movement, and it made some change. Not that it fixed everything, but here we have a potential movement, and if someone doesn't get out and lead this, we're going to be back to where we were a week ago.
Right.
So.
Yeah, so I believe that things like this have a shelf life of 7 to 10 days, and so the things like this have a shelf life of 7 to 10 days. Racism has had a shelf life of
Forever.
Centuries.
Jews in Samaria. Jews in Samaria. Like, that shelf life has existed. But this thing right now, this topical issue, this trending issue, I'd say, has a shelf life of 7 to 10 days. I like to say that prosperity brings amnesia, right? So before, the issue was, COVID-19 social distancing. Now it's like protesting. Now we forgot that we should be social distancing because now there's something else. There's something else trending.
Right. It's another hashtag we're focused on.
Right. Yeah. So there's another hashtag. It had a shelf life. Back to what you're saying as far as like I didn't own slaves, systematic racism. So we talked about there's a difference between being racist and anti-racist. When it comes to systematic racism, or systemic racism, there's a thought of, well, it can't be systematic because laws have been put in place to prevent it from happening, right? And we say, yes, thank you, laws have been put into place. But there has been mindsets and heritage that has been handed down to people in power. And so you would think of back in the day, so if I were to take what has happened back in the days of slavery, where when slaves were free, they needed to live somewhere, right? And at that time, you're not living in my neighborhood, black person. you need to find your own space. Matter of fact, I don't know if you ever heard of the term 40 acres and a mule. It's what all slaves that were freed were supposed to be given as reparations. Because it wasn't that blacks were inherently lazy, built the South, right through labor. So they were to be given 40 acres and a mule. The South caused a ruckus. Lincoln was like, yeah, we're not going to do that. Right. So now you have to find a place to live. Well, where are we going to live? Because white people aren't going to let us live. It's not like slaves are free. You know what? We changed our whole mind about black people. You can come live with us. We'll help you. No, it wasn't like that. There was, and so if we think it's rough now, back then, so you're not living with me. So then they had to find plots of land, and they called those places ghettos. So black people lived in large communities in ghettos, and those ghettos were redlined. There was a place that you could only live in. You can't come outside this zone because this is your zone. You have to come up with your own food. This is where the stereotype of black people eat watermelon and chicken because it's the quickest thing that can grow. Because in poor families, you know how to make all kinds of stuff from flour. You can make stuff stretch out. So that's where that mindset comes from.
Right.
Is that they had to do a lot with a little. And so now they're put in this place. They're redlined. This is where you belong, and you have to build your own community from there. And so you have this people group that thinks they're more superior because of where they live, how they live, and what they can do, more superior than this group here. So then we begin to fast forward, and the black community creates schools and churches. There's a thing called Black Wall Street. I don't know if you heard of Black Wall Street.
Yeah.
Black Wall Street was black people putting their money together and giving each other loans to do things. Well, the government saw it, almost like the Tower of Babel. It was like, they're going to become great. We're going to burn it down.
Right.
And they burnt down the communities. This is where the KKK comes in, burning schools and burning houses and burning churches. To set them back, even with the laws of Jim Crow laws, where there was segregation. You're over here, we're over here. Your vote, you're 3/5 of a man, so your vote doesn't count as much, right? We take that template and we slide it across to today, and we see that that there's redlining still today. Now it's not legal, but banks know I should not give a loan to a person from this community because they may not pay it back.
Right.
So therefore, you can't get a loan to be able to become better. Then we have voting zones where certain areas of the country, their vote is a little bit greater than other people's votes. We're sliding the template over.
Right.
We're sliding the template. There is no such thing as slavery, but we look at a prison system made of majority black males. The prison system is a business.
Right.
It's a business. They have to put bodies in that prison system to be able to keep that system working. Now, so if I were to, they make furniture in prison, roads, they make all kinds of things in prisons. So why would I start a factory to have to pay someone $25 an hour when I get someone to work for pennies, nickels, on the day to do the same thing that they're willing? We got to put bodies in this thing. Well, where can I find bodies? Let's find some zones, right? Police departments are more likely in red zoned areas. If you over police something, you're going to find more crime. If you test more people for COVID-19, guess what you're going to find? COVID-19, more cases, COVID-19. So if I over-police an area, I'm going to find more crime. Our town of Greencastle, if you go down on a Saturday, they're not even in there, right? They're not even in there. But if I go to downtown Hagerstown, it's on the clock. It's on the clock, right? So, but does that mean that there's no drugs happening in Greencastle? Talk to any one of your students. They know at the bonfire, they know there's underage drinking, they know that drugs, don't people know that all drugs matter? Why aren't we policing out here? If we police out here, we will find that there's students that are doing illegal things. Right? But there's not heavy policing here. If there's heavy policing here, we would be amazed at how many of our kids have been caught for doing drugs.
Right.
So we can't say, oh, they have a high crime area because it's being reported, it's being found out. So we slide it over. Bodies go into prison. Guess what happens to their vote? It's not even 3/5 of a vote. It's 0% of a vote.
Right.
So we slide the template from here. We slide it here, and we see there are crazy similarities to what's going on.
And that's not to say that someone who commits a crime shouldn't, be held to account,
Right.
but recognizing the overemphasis on certain areas.
Knowing that the system
Yes.
is still the same from here all the way to right here.
Right.
The system has patterns
Right.
that have not changed. And so, yes, it's illegal to say, I'm arresting you because you're black. It's illegal to say that.
Right.
It's illegal to say, I'm not going to give a loan to you because you're a red line. It shouldn't even, it's on the books, it's supposed to not be a thing.
Right.
Right? So, yes, the system is not there, but the institution is there. The patterns are there to allow racist behavior to continue to happen. So I could never go in and I could never speak up about it. It has to be someone that looks like the oppressor to go in and speak truth to power to cause it to change.
Right.
To me, from me, it would sound like I'm a troublemaker. As great as we thought Martin Luther King was, I think we can all agree Martin Luther King was a great man. Martin Luther King was a troublemaker in his day. He was kind of as a troublemaker. He shut down bridges. He shut down bus stations through Rosa Parks. He shut down roads and streets. We would have called him a troublemaker.
Right.
So we can say he was peaceful, but I think many people I see posting, if he was today, he'd be a troublemaker.
Sure.
Because a protest is supposed to cause the elephant in the room to be addressed.
Right.
And anytime the elephant is in the room and it's addressed and it's not my thing, it is a problem, it is a troublemaker, we have got to get rid of it. So I don't believe that many people today could have lived back in the day of Martin Luther King.
Right.
They'd be too divided. My goodness, I'd be social distance from my community of friends.
Well, and that brings up a great point because I was sharing earlier the story that I had recently seen on Facebook. And it's a story about a guy from our own church history in the early 5th century. It's a guy named Telemachus. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. I can't say for sure. But he was a priest in our Christian faith. And he came from what is modern day Turkey, Syria area. And he wakes up one day and he just has this kind of voice in his deep soul saying, you need to go to Rome. And he's like, what? What are you talking about? You're crazy, man. Come on. And he says, all right, fine. If this is of God, I'll go. I don't know why. I have no preconceived idea what I'm even supposed to do there, but I know I need to go. So I'm going to go. So he makes his way over to Rome. And he finds himself in the middle of this city when there's a gladiator battle going on there in a stadium somewhere. We don't know if the story doesn't specify the Colosseum, but we can imagine what that was like. Right. And here's these two gladiators just going at it. They are at each other. The whole goal is to kill the other guy.
Right.
I mean, that's the goal, one against the other.
Right.
And Telemachus is just absolutely just sick into his stomach at this visceral activity that is entertaining huge crowds.
Right.
I mean, people are watching this and they're like, yeah, woohoo, kill the guy.
Right.
And Telemachus just runs down and he stands between the two. And 3 times he finally gets him to stop after he yells, in the name of Christ, stop. 3 times he yells as they finally kind of stop. And as the story is told by the historian, he's stoned to death right there on the spot by the crowd because they got so mad that he interrupted this visceral battle between two parties.
Wow.
And I read that and I'm like, there is no better picture for the church today to recognize that we all, go to your Facebook, just look. You will see people lamenting the divide between people.
Right. And you'll see the Colosseum with lights.
Yes.
And,
yes.
and thumbs down.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
you'll see
preach
the
it. Oh,
Colosseum.
amen. Woohoo. Yeah.
Right.
Whatever.
Right.
But at the same time, the church's role is not to take the side of either the gladiators. It's to be that priest standing between, bridging the gap, saying, stop. You're going to kill each other before we ever fix any problems here.
Yeah.
That's the church's role. And that's what I think this conversation is hopefully helping you at home here. We're not meant to be on either side so much as we are meant to bridge the gap and saying, look, you're both angry. You're both going at each other's throat here. There's a better way to, we've got to find a better way to deal with these elephants in the room or they're going to crush us. Right. And we're going to kill each other before they even crush us.
Yeah, he was a perfect example of what the word intercessory means.
Right.
Enter means to go, seed means between. So to intercede means to go in between. Right. And he came in as a peacemaker. I mean, what's the church supposed to be? Peacemakers.
Yeah, blessed are the peacemakers is one of the Beatitudes that Jesus himself says.
So we go in and we intercede as peacemakers. We go in between. We literally go in between at the sake of being called, what are you getting yourself into? You should just stay out of it. You should be on our side. Well, I'm in the side of, in the name of Christ.
Right.
In the name of Christ. That's the side I'm on. And we would say that with any other thing in our life. Like, where do you stand on this issue? I stand with Christ. Do you think racism is sin? Yes. Where are you at in this issue? Well, I'm kind of quiet.
Right. Right. Exactly.
And the problem being, like, for me in a rural community that is 99.9% white, I feel removed from that. And Ryan and I were talking, and he's like, we have to put ourselves there. Like, we have to go. What'd you say his name was?
Telemachus.
Telemachus went to Rome, and if God is sending us somewhere, we have to be obedient to go no matter what. Because I know that when God sends us, He equips us.
Right.
So we have to be willing to go outside our comfort zone. And it's not affecting our little community here in Greencastle, but Hagerstown's not far.
Right.
So
I would even venture to say that with the 1 or 2% of black kids in the school, it's at least happening to 1 or 2% of people in Greencastle.
Right.
And so the 1 or 2% that's in Greencastle
Right.
is looking into Hagerstown because there is no voice in Greencastle until right now.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it's not that it's far removed, maybe far removed from you because your house doesn't consist of a black population.
Right.
But at my house, we're having a conversation.
Right, and I think it's easier for us to feel like if we can insulate against that coming to us, that if we can pretend it's not happening in our community, then it doesn't matter.
We'll just turn up, the brakes are
Right.
squealing, turn
up the volume.
We're good, we're good over here.
But at the same time, Jesus is talking to his disciples at the very beginning of Acts. He says, "You will be my witnesses." And a witness is not just someone going to necessarily a court of law, but these are people who are meant to go out and be proclaiming the good news of the gospel. And he says, "You will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, the city you are in, but also Judea, the region in which you are, and Samaria," which, as you mentioned earlier, when Jesus when Jesus dealt with anyone who was Samaritan, that was a racial issue. They were mixed breeds.
I want you to pause there. I want the listeners to hear
absolutely.
that anytime you hear Jesus speak about Samaria, the Samaritans, in our context, it would literally be like the white people went to the black area. Right. In that time, they would say, or to the people of color area. So it would literally be like people would, if they had to go from here to here, they would go around Samaria because they didn't want to go through Samaria. So when you hear Jesus went through, or Jesus needed, like you said, needed to go through, that there is a reason why that's in there. It's not just some.
It's not like the bridge was out.
It's just like, oh, it must have been flooding in the area. And you had to kind of go around and go through it.
Right.
He was literally like proving a point. The Good Samaritan is literally telling Jews there are good out there.
Right.
Like there are good out there.
This imaginary divide is not.
And they're listening like, they're like, why is he talking about a Samaritan? Like, what is it? A Samaritan would stop? A Samaritan would do good things?
Right.
You're telling me I don't have to clutch my purse when I see a Samaritan?
Well, and it's not just that, it's the juxtaposition of that against two people who would otherwise have been upstanding, righteous, pious people. And yet they were the ones who said, I'm not going to get involved.
Right.
I'm not going to speak up on this. I'm not going to put myself in a position of danger here.
Right.
But it was the Samaritan, the one that was racially different, that was perceived with a prejudice, that changed the narrative.
Yeah. I believe the reason why the Samaritan probably stopped overall is because the Samaritan understood the pain.
Right.
The Samaritan probably understood the pain of what it was to be passed over and passed by.
And this,
so it created an empathy in the heart of Samaritan.
In this situation, you know, my heart was breaking this week. We already had plans of what we were going to do for worship, for this video already in stone. And I'm like, listen, we can't ignore it. We can't ignore what's going on. What can we do? And that's when your name came up. And so as we get back to focusing on, you know, like our mindset as white people is we're removed from these things, and then we bring up racial thoughts. It's not the racial thoughts, the racial things that are taking place. It's the systemic racism that we have to look at, and those things are you're not afforded the same opportunity as I am because of my skin color. You're not afforded potentially the same job as I am because of your skin color. Like you said, a bank is, because you're in that red zone, you're not afforded the opportunity to even get a leg up because of your skin color. And those are things that we necessarily ignore. We don't understand, or we just ignore them. And that's the things that need to change. change,
Right.
so that we are understood that we're brothers, man. We are, and what can I do to help you, and how do we stop staying on our side of the tracks?
Right.
Because we stay on our side of the
Yeah,
tracks.
so I can hear someone right now yelling in their living room right now. He does have the same opportunity.
Right.
He does have it because legally, I have to have the same opportunity. There's no reason why he can't. And I hear you in your living room. I hear you. If I want to address that, okay. I do believe that I live in one of the greatest countries like on this planet, the greatest country for an opportunity. If we were to take, I love illustrations. I'm a youth pastor at heart, so I love to give like visuals. If we were to look at our culture of America as though it was a monopoly board, okay, and we have Go, we have what, Baltic Avenue, Mediterranean or whatever. So I think it's
I
like
hate
purple.
Monopoly, to be honest.
Yeah, so you have Go, you have the purple, you have jail, you have the I think it's like yellow and red or something. You're probably like, no, it's not that color. And then you come around free parking, and you have this area. Then you come around there, and then you have like at the end you have like Park Place and like those places.
Yeah.
So
Before we go on, I'm just going to let you know we're going to put a fact check down along the bottom of the screen here to check how accurate he was just on that. But go ahead.
I do know there's 4 sides.
Go on.
I do know there's 4 sides to the square, Monopoly. And so if you take a culture that has been afforded the opportunity to play this game for so long, and in the South, maybe not even play the game, but have other people play the game for you, right? To do the hard work of rolling the dice, collecting, and going through all these things, and you've had the opportunity to pass Go, you've had the opportunity to buy land, you had the opportunity to put not houses, but hotels. You had the opportunity to do these things. And then all of a sudden you have someone saying, hey, can I play? And you're like, man, we're kind of in the middle of this game, but yeah, sure, you can come in. Here's your $200. Because you know, if I land on even one property, I'm paying rent. I'm not owning anything. I'm going to pay some rent. So it's not that I haven't been given $200. It's not like I haven't been given the opportunity to play on the board. I have been given the opportunity to play on the board, but I've been given the opportunity to play on the board that other people have been able to play on for hundreds of years. To where when you now say, okay, I'm retiring from the game, hey, son, here you go. And now your generation, your legacy now gets to play the game with the hotels and with the farmland and with all the things. If I haven't, if I pass Go and I'm still able to like survive on the first way because I'm paying the rent and I'm just hoping that community chest would be kind to me. You understand where I'm going?
Yeah.
And if I'm hoping that community chest would be beneficial to me, just to help me out. I'm not saying pay for everything. I'm just saying give a brother a break while I'm on this board called Monopoly. Well, they should have to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. It'd be great if we all started at the same time.
Right.
But we all didn't start at the same time.
It'd be great if we even all had bootstraps to pull ourselves up by.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's part of it too.
Yeah.
Well, and that sort of ties into a biblical concept of the year of Jubilee. I mean, that every basically what was essentially every generation, there was to be a complete reset.
Right.
Hey, you know what? You played the game great so far, but God wants to make sure everyone, all people, even those who had some bad dice rolls and bad community chest experiences, are still afforded a chance at life.
Can't do
It's almost
that.
like reparations. To the have-nots, it looked like reparations.
Right.
It looked like 40 acres and a mule.
Right.
It looked like that.
Right.
Jews were in concentration camps and they came out fine. That's because Germany gave Jewish people reparations. They realized that there has been a setback, that you have been struggling on Baltic Avenue, and we need to help you somehow get around this board called life, aka Monopoly, right? To do this. So that's where those reparations came in to help the Jewish people, and it worked out great.
Absolutely.
It helped them. So I'm not even sure what the answer for that is now. I think many people in the black community would just be okay if reparations were empathy.
Sure. And that's what we want to try to start with
to
here.
Pay me the luxury of listening.
Right.
Just They don't have to pay me much, just pay me the
Yeah.
opportunity for the attention for this conversation.
Just treat us like human beings.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's
treat me like Jesus
yeah.
would treat a Samaritan.
Not with a prejudice, not with an agenda. Just
Right.
treat me like a human being.
Yeah, and you can even come in with your prejudice. Come in with your preconceived, okay, I have this thought.
Sure.
But sit long enough to listen to at least prove you wrong or prove you right about me specifically. Sure. Not the culture.
Right.
But me specifically. If a white person were to cut me off, I wouldn't be like, all white people can't drive. Right? I'll be like, that person can't drive. But we would generally say, I know of one.
Yeah.
So they all must be the same. Just like we can't say, I don't want cop that's bad. We would not say that at all. We would not say that at all. But many times we lump a whole culture of people because we had one bad experience with one person. My father was able to get over. My father grew up in the segregated 60s on the Eastern Shore in Cambridge, Maryland. And he moved from one redlined area of Eastern Shore to another redlined area in Hagerstown. I'm sure we have all heard of a street called Jonathan Street. If you're familiar with Hagerstown, you go through past City Park over the railroad tracks down to Summit Avenue. Summit Avenue, once you pass a street called Franklin Street, turns into Jonathan Street. The name of the street changes. It's a straight street. Straight Franklin Avenue, Jonathan Street. You go through Jonathan Street, then becomes a fork in the road. You would think that one of the streets would continue to be Jonathan Street, but now the street changes and it becomes Pennsylvania Avenue, and it becomes Forest Drive. This street right here is called Jonathan Street. The streets that come from Potomac Street down are called something. It's called the same name, and once it passes Potomac Street, it's called something different because it's redlined. So where now, if you're an employer, and I get a resume, I get a job, okay, so I'll fill an application, and I see a street name, I can already know I can go bring them in for an interview. So no, it's illegal to do it. I wouldn't dare say I threw the application away, but I would say, no, not that person.
Right.
I don't have to see them, I just know where they come from. So my dad went from one redlined area. You can literally check it. You can, as it is over, push pause if you're watching it, and look at the downtown and in there and see the names of the street literally are changed. Because if you come from that street, I automatically know where you're from.
Right.
And so I know you're from Samaria. I know you're from Samaria. And so, but that came from one redlined area on the Eastern Shore. The red zone, the red line area was Pine Street and High Street. He came from there to the Wheaton Park areas where my grandfather ran the park, and that was in the redlined area, Jonathan Street. He went to North High. From North High, when he graduated, he was in the Vietnam War. From the Vietnam War, he came out. Although he was a hero to some, he would still be spit on for sitting at the wrong table, right? And so he went to HCC. We know at HCC, Hagerstown Community College at the time. He took a public speaking class. The teacher saw something like promising in him. The teacher knew someone who knew someone who knew someone that worked at IBM and said, this guy, Charles Daniel Sterling, would be a great person for you to hire.
Right.
He's a great speaker. He's a leader amongst his class. That person said yes to my dad. That person that teacher seeing something in my dad that got him a job, literally took him from this part of Monopoly and put him on this part of Monopoly. To where he didn't have to go through he literally got like helped up. And now he's on this, and so from here, was able to move out of a redlined area.
Right.
Because of finances. Was able to help him at least be able to get that momentum up, to be able to do that. And from that right there has caused a dramatic change in my upbringing. To where I lived in a house outside of a redlined area, house that had 5 digits on the street address, right? A house with a 5-digit street address. Like we know what that is.
Is that my house number or is that my telephone number? I can't remember which it is here.
You know what I mean? And so what it did was, man, it changed the legacy. It changed the financial status. It changed. I was able to go to school. Like I was able to my parents were able to allow me that I didn't have to work. I could do extracurricular activities 'Cause I didn't have to get a job to help support the family.
Right.
I was able to stay out of trouble through extracurricular activities. I was able to get an allowance. I didn't have to try to find money in some other way, to generate finance in some other way to be able to get what I wanted. My family was able to get that. So all that to say that lady saw something in my dad, didn't see a Samaritan, maybe saw a Samaritan, but maybe saw just as good as someone else. He affords a chance.
Right.
And so I would say to circles, like what could a white person do for like right now in this area? I would say, man, just have your heads on the swivel. Look through empathy and compassion at those that just don't look like you. It is just a personal bias. It's personal bias. Like, it's not anything wrong with it. It's just like, oh, I gravitate toward that person. Nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
But there's something wrong with you say, I don't want to communicate with this person, right? I'm a Redskins fan, so I generally gravitate toward Redskins fans. There's very few and far between.
Right.
But
at least you're not a Baltimore. At least you're not a Baltimore fan.
Right.
Sorry, guys.
So we just gravitate.
Rob, I'll send him your number.
So we just gravitate toward people that kind of we connect with and we gel with.
Sure.
There would be something wrong if, I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with cliques unless someone else can't get in your group. Someone else can't get in your group, you need to check your heart about why. And so that lady saw that and my dad wasn't in her clique or her group, but she allowed him to come in. And she talked to someone who knew someone. And from that moment, man, I've been able to have these opportunities, opportunity for like better parenting. Man, I had like two parents in my house, man, like giving me like the mom perspective, a compassion, the father of like the authority figure. Man, I was like it allowed my parents to not have to struggle and not have that tension of finances that normally would separate a family apart. And so they had that. Because of that, my brother and my mom. So now here's the deal. When my father died when I was 18. When he was there on the job, he knew nothing about life insurance or 401k. He would be in cars with other white guys bragging about their investments. My mom said that my dad would be sitting in the car, find out what 401k is, find out what life insurance is, find out, asking all these questions. So that way he found out what these things were. So when my dad died when I was 18 years old, he had life insurance. My mom was able to pay off the house. So now you know what that means? From here, we're on this side of the board here, that now if I was still at home and my mom were to die, I don't have to rent. I have a house that's paid for. You know what that now does? Everything I have in savings, every paycheck I get, I can put in the bank now. I don't have to spend time on Baltic trying to get by.
Right.
And so that's where the system of the systematic racism or institutionalization, that's where all that comes in. And we just see these systems of happening. Now, anyone can get caught up in the system, no matter what color you are.
Sure.
But we would be hard pressed to say that because you're white going through the monopoly piece, that it's not a hurdle for you. It's not like a setback. Right. You know what I mean? It's not looked at as, oh, he's white, he can't be over here.
Right.
You know, we got to keep an eye on him. Like, what are you doing over here?
Sure.
But there are hurdles. There are hurdles in this system of America. There are hurdles that if you don't look like that personal bias, there's like another look, there's another glance at you. And so it's not a hurdle for like white culture to navigate through the monopoly board because of your skin color.
Right.
And so, so that's kind of like, when we break these things down, that's what these conversations are great for.
Sure.
I think the most important thing that I see here is that you're listening. You're listening, you're taking it all in. Like you might not be talking much, but you are, I sense it, that you're like, information that I probably wouldn't have known had I not had this conversation.
Right.
And so these things are so important. So now the question is, now that we know this, what will we do in our inner circles? Right. I'd rather you not even post than pat yourself on the back, but in the conversations now when people be like, oh, look at them, they're lazy. Well, let me tell you something about that. What I've learned is that there's a system called redlining that many people are in. Like in Greencastle, I'm sure that I don't know much about Greencastle, but there's probably are areas in Greencastle that I kind of like stay in my area, and I kind of like go from here to the park, like go from here to Brothers, and like go back in Hagerstown. So I'm not familiar with Greencastle. Sure. But there probably are areas in Greencastle that are some area. And if someone were to have a bank, they would be like, look at the address and be like, I'm not sure.
Right.
I haven't pulled up a red line map of Greencastle, but there probably is an area, Greencastle, that you probably wouldn't approve loans for. So if that person keeps renting, that person does have a job, like it's a job that has like life insurance or something like that, and that person dies, that family now has to keep paying rent to someone who is on this part of the board that owns property that's not renting. So that family is now in the system of having to rent. And now their finances are tied up into rent and not get a better education.
Right.
Rent and not get a car so you can come out of here and get a better job somewhere else because you have transportation.
Right.
You don't have transportation, I can't get a job. Why can't I have transportation? Because I'm paying rent. Why are you paying rent? Because like when someone was done with the monopoly board, that money went into the middle of the board because the bank took it.
Right.
Bank took the property. Bank took everything. You didn't have something. You handed off. Here's my money. Now it's here's my debt.
Right.
There's some people that have here's savings because we've been able to navigate through the monopoly board.
Sure.
So that's kind of where a lot of that comes in. So it's not that. So that was a long thing. I feel like there was somebody I feel like there was somebody listening.
Somebody out there just finished a game of Monopoly that started when you started that image.
Yeah,
that's
I think
okay.
somebody was listening that heard you say, like, look at me and say, I don't have something because of who I am. And someone's probably thinking, no, he has all the opportunity to be able to get it. Yeah, I do have the opportunity to be on the board.
On paper, on legal paper.
Yeah, on legal paper I do.
But there's still the systemic biases that even are subconscious, not even necessarily things we consciously are aware of.
Right.
And I think that's part of what we need to talk about too so one of the other images, because I'm a youth pastor by trade too initially, so I'm with you right there with the metaphors. I brought this can along and you guys can hopefully see it at home there, but can when you're looking at that, when we're both looking, pretend this is a scenario where we're looking at the exact same thing happening. Okay. What do you see on that can? What do you read?
Starbucks Nitro Cold Brew.
Okay, no, you're wrong because I see nutrition facts.
What?
It's not Starbucks. It's nutrition facts.
Nah, I see Starbucks Nitro Cold Brew. That's all I'm seeing.
Yes, I'm seeing nutrition facts. You're wrong. Your perspective is wrong.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying here? Do you see what I'm saying here?
Yeah.
Because now we're seeing the exact same thing from a completely different perspective.
Right.
Because we are on the different side of this issue at times.
Right.
Now, what it's going to take for me to recognize what you were witnessing, what you were experiencing as a person of color, is for me to get out of my seat, uncomfortable as it is, and come over here and say, wait a second, I see what you're saying.
Right.
And that's difficult because it forces me to get out of where I'm comfortable. I was comfortable in that. I mean, only so comfortable in a wooden chair for so long. But you can see what my point is. If we get comfortable in perceiving things the way we always have, and then we're challenged with someone who's seeing the exact same thing in a different way because of some difference of race, and we're not willing to say, all right, let me get a little uncomfortable. Let me be willing to at least come a little ways to come through some area. I'm not going to go through the middle of it, but maybe I'll dip my toes in it and slowly work my way into some area. There's never going to be an option or opportunity for us to find that common ground and recognize we're really not as different as we thought we were.
Right. Yeah. And I think even this illustration right here, to see this, like there's no way the system is going to flip.
Right.
For me to see it.
Right.
Like there's no way, like one day the prison system would be like, you know what, we're no longer going to be a business.
Right.
So we don't need as many bodies in here.
Right.
We're just going to flip.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. Right. What's going to happen is someone in the justice system, legal system, to be able to get uncomfortable and say, you know what, I don't need this many yachts. I don't need this much money to hand down to my family. Maybe empathy and compassion is going to tell me we don't need as many bodies in the prison system. Right. We'll change the system. That's probably not going to happen.
Well, and the bottom line is we can't legislate morality.
Right.
I mean, that's the hardest thing I think, we've always been taught as kids. You can change the world by changing the law. Right. And I'm like, no, we've got to change the heart first. Yeah, that's where the Holy Spirit comes in.
The law will only say if you're found guilty now that. Right. But what I can do is I can hide what I feel so I can never be found guilty. Right. That's the messy part of racism. I have, through the years, have been very careful with calling things racist. Right. Because, if we'll get uncomfortable again, Ahmaud Arbery, people are like, oh, he's racist. Well, we didn't hear the guy call the Ahmaud Arbery the N-word when he shot him. Right. So therefore, we can't. It's not racist but just about every black person I know, we know that we probably don't go down to the South if we're out in the area at nighttime. There's just a reason why. And I think we all kind of there's some areas you probably shouldn't go to at nighttime.
Right.
Why? Because it's kind of, you probably won't be welcomed there. Well, why? And some people are like, oh, that doesn't exist. You would literally tell me there's some areas I shouldn't go to, right? Am I right? Like, you don't have to tell me where they are.
Right.
But do you think there's some areas that I should probably tiptoe around it? I probably should avoid.
And the justification on the white man's side is going to be like, oh, there's areas I won't go in Hagerstown.
Right, yeah. And
that's how we justify it.
And I love that, because through the system, there are places that if a white person can't come in, it's not going to mess up your day.
Right. It does.
It's not going to mess
because I
up
get what
your
I
day.
need somewhere else.
You get what you need somewhere else.
Right.
I have to come to you to get it. I have to come to you for your schools. I have to come to you for your hospitals. I have to come to you for banking. You don't have to come to me for what? For hip hop? What is it that you have to come to be, when I say you, white culture has to come to black culture for? Right. So the fact that you don't have to come through Samaria ain't even a big deal, because you have a car that you can just go right around. It's fine. But I have to go outside Samaria to get my thing. And so that's where I would even offer that up. Where there are probably some places that you probably would not be welcomed. It's not going to mess up your day.
Right.
There's places that I would probably not be welcomed, and I'm like, dag,
it'd be so much easier if you could go there and do what you need to do.
Right. Yeah. Right. Like there are. Oh, man, dude. All right, I'm gonna leave names out of it. All right, but there are places. There are. Oh, snap.
What kind of places? Let's go with that.
All right.
Restaurants or
restaurant. So there's a restaurant that my wife will go to here in Greencastle, and there will be it'll be normal for her. My wife is white, by the way. It will be normal for her. Her parents will go to, and it is just normal service. Just walk in and just boom. When my wife brings myself or my kids, who are also a mixture of my wife and I, into the same restaurant, she literally feels like the music stops. And because of that, and so my wife knows the difference. I don't know the difference, because all I know is when I walk in, it's just very quiet.
Right.
Right? When my wife walks in, the noise is still the same decimal, And so my wife now says, we will not eat there. We will not. And I'm like, what's wrong? She said, it is not like this when you're not here. She is uncomfortable. You know what I'm saying? Now, they might not say it to my face, and they might not even know that they're doing it. But they're like clutching that purse, and they're just like, and people probably have no idea that I would probably be one of the people that will fight for, protect, and if something were to happen, I would be the one to put my body in front of the bullet for somebody. I would probably be the one in the restaurant to do it.
Sure.
Right? But they would think I would be the one with the gun.
Because of the color of your skin.
Because of the color of my skin. Yeah. And everyone that knows me probably would say, yeah, I believe that Pastor Tyree would do. He'd probably be the last person.
Yeah, and there's folks here. There's folks here in my church in particular that know what you're about. They'd speak up for that exact same thing.
Right, and that's because they have, maybe they haven't come to Samaria, but they allow Samaria to come to them.
Right.
And now they have a totally different perspective.
Right.
That's what conversations that allow people that don't look like your people come in front of your people and live life around your people. Now they're like, nah. There are good Samaritans.
Sure.
there are good Samaritans.
And that's exactly what Jesus was saying. You can't use that, oh, you're Samaritan, draw the line.
Right.
And that's true of a lot of folks. But yeah.